You're ready. One of our cats goes.
I call to order the May 2019 meeting of the Lafayette Common Council. Please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please conduct a roll call?
Heidi.
Here.
Clinker.
Here.
Campbell. Reynolds.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Allersmeyer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
Downing.
Here.
Nargi. Quorum present.
Okay, first on the agenda, we need to have a motion to recess for a public hearing.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. This is for ordinance 2019-10.
An ordinance for appropriation of park bond funds, Fund 3120.
Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak to this? No, then I need a motion to reconvene the council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, approval of the minutes of our April 1st meeting, 2019. Are there any corrections on that? Okay, do I need a motion to accept these minutes as communicated?
I move to approve as written.
A second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, we got that done. Presentation of disposal of claims.
There are none.
Presentation of petitions and communications.
There are none.
Reports of city offices on file in the city clerk's office.
Fleet maintenance, monthly March. Police Department, monthly March. Renew Department, monthly March. Waterworks Department, monthly March.
These are all on file at the city clerk's office and can be reviewed during regular hours. Okay, our first ordinance for second reading is ordinance 2019-10.
An ordinance for appropriation of park bond funds, Fund 3120.
Okay, do we have a motion to,
I move to bring that to the floor.
okay,
Second.
second? All right.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the council, at the time of the budget adoption for the 2019 calendar year, the 2018 Park District bond had not been sold. Since that time, the bond has been sold, and we now know our principal and interest payment that is coming due in 2019. We asked for appropriation of the Park Bond Fund in the amount of $458,396.58.
Okay, are there any questions from council members concerning this ordinance?
What rate were we able to get?
This rate was 3.2%.
3.2.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience about this ordinance? Okay, thank you, Mr. Clary.
Thank you.
Okay, so will the clerk conduct a roll call vote on ordinance 2019-10?
Heidi.
Aye.
Clinker.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Okay, now we're on to ordinances for first reading, ordinance 2019-12.
An ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Uzo Amendments Number 95.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
Madam President, I move that we hear and approve ordinance 2019-12.
Second.
Okay.
Yes.
You're going to speak to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Ordinance 2019-12 adds a new section to the Unified Zoning Ordinance to provide the administrative officers an additional enforcement tool. This ordinance will authorize an administrative officer to issue a written citation notice for certain land use or development standard violations as set forth in the ordinance. If the violation isn't corrected within 15 days, the administrative officer can issue a fine up to $250. If it's still not corrected within 30 days, the fine will double, and if not corrected within 45 days, the fine will triple. These changes will primarily benefit the other governmental units that are covered by UZO, because the City of Lafayette already can enforce our zoning violations through our Ordinance Violation Bureau. However, this will be an additional tool for administrative officers as well if they'd like to use it.
Okay. Any questions from council members concerning this ordinance? Any questions from the audience? Okay, will the clerk conduct a roll call vote for ordinance 2019-12?
Heidi,
Aye.
Blinker.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Okay, ordinance 2019-13.
An orders for appropriation of local option highway use tax funds, County Wheel Tax Fund Number 2490.
Mrs. Williamson?
Oh, I move that we hear and approve ordinance 2019-13.
Second.
Okay, great. Mr. Clary again.
Ordinance 2019-13 is for the appropriation of the 2019 local option highway user tax fund, commonly known as the wheel tax surtax fund. The amount of $975,000 is comprised of the carryover cash balance plus the estimated revenue we intend to receive from the county in 2019. This money will be used to pave, repave, maintain streets in the city of Lafayette.
Okay, great. Any questions from council members?
Did you ask for a list of the streets on
Yes, I did.
Wednesday?
They were emailed.
Email about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that. Okay.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, will the clerk conduct a roll call vote on ordinance 2019-13?
Heidi.
Aye.
Blinker.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Okay, and we need to set a public hearing for this ordinance on June 3rd at 6:31. Can I have a motion to,
So moved.
so moved?
Second.
Second? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign? Okay. Ordinance 2019-14.
An ordinance to amend 2.11.020 pertaining to the fire pension fund.
Mr. Reynolds?
I move to hear ordinance 2019-14.
Okay, and Mr. Heidi?
Second.
Okay, great. Mr. Mayor?
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about 14 and 15 kind of together here. These pertain to the police and fire departments. The fire department, it's the old fund, the 1937 fund, and for the police department, it's the 1925 fund. We still have control over these funds here at the City of Lafayette, not like the newer fund that people are on called the 77 fund. So what this does is it raises the widow's benefit from 40 to 42%, raising that 2%, so they will get a little bit higher percentage of that pension when someone passes away. And so we have the funds to do this for both police and fire, and we think it's the right thing to do, and we'd appreciate your support on these two ordinances.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions for council on this ordinance?
Yeah. How many people did you say were currently, did this involve, how many, approximately how many widowers or?
We have very few people that are still left on these older funds.
Okay.
I don't recall the exact number off the top of my head, but we have very few people.
Like 50 to 100 or? Okay, all right.
Okay, any questions from the audience on this ordinance? Okay, will the clerk conduct a roll call vote on ordinance 2019-14?
Heidi.
Aye.
Clinker.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Okay, ordinance 2019-15.
An ordinance to amend 2.13.120 pertaining to the police pension fund.
Mr. Brown?
Madam President, I move that we hear and approve ordinance 2019-15.
Second?
Okay. Okay, the mayor already spoke to that. It's the same, but this one is for the police. Any questions from council concerning this? Any questions from the audience? Okay, will the clerk conduct a roll call vote for ordinance 2019-15?
Heidi.
Aye.
Clinker.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Okay, ordinance 2019-16.
An ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Tippecanoe County, Indiana, Uzo Amendment Number 96.
Mrs. Williamson?
I move that we hear and approve ordinance number 2019-16.
Mr. Downing? Okay. You're going to speak to this, okay?
Yes, this ordinance will amend UZO to prohibit what are called large wind systems in Tippecanoe County. The APC Ordinance Committee determined with overwhelming support of concerned citizens that large wind systems, which are systems over 140 feet, were not desired or appropriate in Tippecanoe County. The APC voted in favor of this ordinance, 11 yes, 4 no. Small wind systems, which are systems up to 140 feet, and micro wind systems, which are small building-mounted systems, would still be permitted.
Okay, questions from council members? Questions from the audience? Hearing none, okay. Will the clerk have a roll call vote on ordinance 2019-16?
Heidi,
Aye.
Blinker.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Brown.
No.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 6-1.
Now we move to resolutions. Resolutions 2019-08.
A resolution of the Common Council approving grant of a gas line easement to Vectren Energy Delivery of Indiana Incorporated for the 18th Street Gas Line Relocation Project.
Okay, Mr. Heidi?
Move to hear Resolution 2019-08.
Second?
Okay. Okay, you're speaking to this one too, okay?
Vectren is undertaking a gas line relocation project along South 18th Street from Teal Road to Logan Avenue. In order to complete the relocation, Vectren will need to acquire temporary and permanent easements from the city at 2 city-owned parcels located at 2150 South 18th Street, which is the Fire Station 7, and 1840 South 18th Street, which is a drainage area we have across from Jeff. The proposed easements won't impact any current or anticipated future operations for either location, and this resolution will authorize the city to grant those easements to Vectren.
Okay, questions from council members? Questions from the audience on this resolution? Okay, I hear none. Will the clerk conduct a roll call vote for resolution 2019-08?
Heidi,
Aye.
Blinker.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Okay, resolution 2019-09.
A resolution to request development of a form-based zoning code as an amendment to the Unified Zoning Ordinance and any appropriate zoning changes for the Highland Park neighborhood within the city of Lafayette.
Mr. Heidi? Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to ask Mr.
Move
Quinn.
for a resolution. Move to hear Resolution 2019-09.
Mr. Reynolds?
Second.
Okay. Dennis?
Good
Oh,
evening.
John?
Yeah, John Collier, Economic Development Department. You have before you Resolution 2019-9 to request development of a form-based code overlay district for the Highland Park neighborhood. The Economic Development staff supports this resolution and the endeavor to study whether or not a form-based code would be appropriate for this area. We've been in discussions with both the Area Plan Commission staff and the Highland Park Neighborhood Association regarding this process. Ryan O'Gara, Assistant Director for the Tippecanoe County Area Plan Commission, is here tonight to give the council a kind of a refresher on what the form-based code process is, because it's been a long time, or several years anyway, since I think this council heard and approved the form-based code overlay for Centennial neighborhood. So Ryan will be here, and he'll come up and give a little intro about that. And then there are also 3 residents from the Highland Park Neighborhood Association here tonight. And Janelle Rotar will be speaking on behalf of the Neighborhood Association in support of this resolution as well. So I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Okay, great.
Good evening. Some of you may recall we passed the Centennial form-based overlay and created a structure for future overlays in other areas of the community. And it was sort of an experiment. We had never done anything quite like this before. I had some previous experience doing these sorts of things in other localities. And the process, in short, and then I'll kind of open up to questions if there's any. The underlying zoning districts stay the same, and rezone petitions could be heard and approved by, or declined by council as is normal. But the overlay basically affects the development standards, and so the underlying zones simply control the uses, either by special exception or by right, and then the development standards, the setbacks, the height, et cetera, would then be controlled by the overlay. And then the overlay can also control architecture. It can control form, and it can be as strict or as loose as you'd like it. It's very customizable. So you could, control roof pitch, how many, what percentage of the facade of a building needs to be windows, all sorts of things. And so and you can also, within a study area, you can have, you can sort of subdivide the neighborhood into areas of distinct character. And so a single-family home in one part of the neighborhood might have a different set of standards than compared to another. So this overlay effort, if it decides to materialize, and we'll be working in concert with the neighborhood to make sure their comfort level is 100%. Is ultimately to kind of define the Highland Park look for the various parts of Highland Park, and to try to codify in the zoning ordinance a style for architecture that can leave the neighborhood and the city with some comfort about what would come with new construction, but at the same time allow some flexibility for an architect to be creative within that framework. So it's a little bit of a high wire that we walk with this, but with the the neighborhood with us, I think we can customize something that they can live with. It ultimately does control only new construction, and so the historic homes that are already there. This isn't a historic overlay per se, or a local historic district. That's another track that the neighborhood, I believe, is not really interested in going down. And so this really just controls new construction, which was mainly their concern, that new homes that come in blend with the historic context of Highland Park. So that's what our objective is.
So it wouldn't be, if you were to renovate a house, take a bungalow, and you wanted to add a second floor, it wouldn't have...
Right. The way we've currently structured the ordinance is that certain additions to homes are exempt from the form-based overlay. That if you're expanding the footprint over a certain percentage, then it's not triggered. And so modest expansions of a structure, they'd be exempt. And they would essentially follow the standards of the existing zone in those cases. The way we structure the form-based overlay is variances are prohibited from these development standards. And so if someone were to come in with a truly unique project that couldn't fit within the overlay, planned development zoning is the ultimate relief valve. And so in those instances, it would be a very, very small localized planned development. But the city's done those before in very specialized cases where you're trying to surgically insert something that doesn't quite work, but the design as proposed does ultimately. And that would come for an up or down vote to city council. So.
You say,
Sir.
Who approves this? You say it comes back here, comes back to the APC, overlay, comes here?
Right. The zoning ordinance change would be a city council vote. It would go through, we would, if this goes the way we're planning, we would develop a draft overlay district. It would go through our ordinance committee and the APC for recommendation, and then it would come to city council. Just like it did with Centennial.
Okay.
Once it's approved, then essentially it's administered jointly, primarily by the city, but working sort of in concert with us. We'll sort of act as a sort of a zoning compliance review check, and then submit our recommendation to the administrative officer who issues permits. So, yes.
I think that's getting covered here, so everything that's there is grandfathered, correct?
Yes.
Everything, and then if it's non-conforming or there's an appeal, you say it has to go to a PD? They don't need anything if it's conforming, right? They would be...
Well, yeah, once it's adopted, then anything that doesn't conform with it presently would be grandfathered.
Right.
And then if people wanted to make modest expansions to those homes, like I said, there is sort of a percentage threshold. It's like an expansion 30% greater of the footprint of the building. So if someone were to add a second floor, that's not really expanding the footprint. So, but yes, if someone wanted to tear down and rebuild,
Okay.
then, and they could not live with the code provisions, then they could do a very localized plan development.
So it wouldn't have anything to do with the Historical Association, whatever, it would actually be a PD for this?
It would be a PD.
That-
And
that's the
then, that
appeal.
actually would give the city some scrutiny over the design, because PDs incorporate architecture into
Sure.
their plans. And so essentially, your check would be, well, it's a single-family home, but does it have the Highland Park look? And it would essentially be up for a vote, whether it does. Now, APC staff would scrutinize it, and our commission would give the recommendation, but ultimately, it would be an up or down vote here.
Okay.
So,
Then any appeal would be a court thing instead of a, right? It
yes,
wouldn't be,
an
right,
appeal
just a
against the
ordinance,
city
whatever
council's vote.
ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Anything else?
thank you.
Welcome.
And somebody from Highland's going to talk
Now I'll
now?
introduce Janelle Rotar. Did you have a question?
I just want to make sure they know that there are going to be lots of meetings with the
Yeah.
neighborhood as
Yeah.
they begin to work through what they want.
Yeah, this could be a months or even potentially longer process to go through with the neighborhood.
Okay, say your name and address, please.
My name is Janelle Rotar. I live at 608 Wyandotte Avenue in the Highland Park neighborhood, and I am here this evening as a representative of the Preservation Steering Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Highland Park Neighborhood Association. And there's 11 of us, and this committee was established in January of this year to oversee this process from the neighborhood perspective, work with City Economic Development and the Area Plan Commission in developing an ordinance that works for our neighborhood. And the reason that we are here, and some people say, why did you even look into this, is that we feel that we had a close call a few years ago, and there was a home, single-family home proposed for Shawnee Avenue that people couldn't quite put their finger on it, but they said it wasn't Highland Park material. And we had no way of protecting ourselves from a suburban tract home that had its garage right up on the sidewalk, no front porch. It didn't fit in with our historic character. So we look at this as a way to give us some sort of predictable results of what we can expect as a neighborhood. We haven't got into the details of are we talking about architecture details? Are we talking about materials? We just want a certain idea of form and massing of what type of new homes will be built in our neighborhood. Should one go down in flames? Should one get demolished? We have old homes and things happen, and old wiring. So it is possible that it's happened before. It could happen again. And the way that we got through the situation on Shawnee was that by the good grace of a neighbor who talked to the developer, and that's why we got what we got. We can't count on that happening next time. We need some sort of protection. And we see the form-based overlay, as a tool to help ensure that new investment complements and recognizes our neighborhood's history. And I'm one of 3 neighbors here from the Preservation Steering Committee, and we support this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the council?
I just wanted to throw in some extra information since this is my area of the city. There was a survey given before this whole process was started, and there were 29 homes that responded, 15 opposed to even pursuing it. So it's kind of a 50-50 mix currently. So I've made sure to speak with Ken Jones, who's been heading up this effort, that it's going to be absolutely instrumental that large proportion of the neighborhood is on board before it passes is a big deal, to put it into writing like this. So I wanted to just pass on to the committee that it's important that they're not the only ones making those decisions, that they're reaching out to the neighbors, going door to door till you hear from everybody before it comes before this council again. I've heard from some people via phone who did not respond to the survey, with some concerns that they have, so I've encouraged them to reach out to the steering committee and ask questions, but I just want to make sure that the information is given to neighbors in plenty of advance notice for any meetings that are taking place before decisions are made. So it is kind of a, admittedly, 50-50 thing in the neighborhood right now. I see both sides to it, but I just felt like the council should be aware of that as we begin this process. And hopefully, people will feel they get enough information to move forward.
And to that point, we've had a fair amount of public outreach. This has been going on, we've been talking about it for about 2 years. There have been two surveys, two online surveys. One was a quality of life survey. Is what do you like about the neighborhood? What are your concerns? And the number one reason people move into the Highland Park neighborhood from the survey respondents is the neighborhood character and the historic nature of it. And that's the reason they moved here. This is the reason they like it. One of their concerns, the top three, is the loss of historic character. So that is a concern, and how they connect the dots from what they like, what their concerns are, and how do you come up with some sort of regulatory approach is a little unknown at this point. But we have had this conversation. It's been going on for 18 months in the Neighborhood Association at the bi-monthly meetings. It's been going on since the summer of 2017. So people are aware of it slowly. It is on our website. There is an attempt to get people in the know. As Lauren says, is that public outreach is a big component of this effort from the neighborhood standpoint, as well as anything that we have to do legally.
So if it's one or two things that are the major opposition to it, if those 15 people, it might be one or two things, and if those aren't in there.
I think it's
then-
just a lack of understanding how this will work.
Right, okay.
And that's, even though you make a you know how it goes, sometimes you make a public call for a meeting, but it's really going to take a door-to-door effort from the people that are proposing the change,
Yeah.
because they're going to need to approach those people and really get into giving them the information about what's out there.
Yeah.
And we do understand that buy-in is by property owner, not just people that show up
Right.
to public meetings or to neighborhood meetings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Any questions from the audience?
Is there a precedent on this?
Come on.
Can you come to the microphone?
Please come to the microphone.
Yeah.
State your name and address, please.
All right, my name is Jerry Brand, 610 Oaklawn Drive. I was curious whether there was a precedent already established, and if there's not, will the actual vote in terms of the neighborhood be a uniform voting tolerance going forward for other neighborhoods? So if you decided there was a 75% of your neighborhood decided this was right, is that arbitrary?
Do you mean for this particular overlay?
Correct.
So as they referred to previously, the Centennial neighborhood has an overlay in place already. And the
Right.
bones of that are kind of what we're using to guide us through this proposed overlay as well. So my proposal to the steering committee is that you have a majority of the neighborhood in favor before bringing it back to the council for a final approval, so that way we're accurately representing what the neighborhood what the neighborhood is hoping to accomplish. So it will all really depend upon the things that are set to happen from here on out. The education, the proposed overlay, as they stated previously, there are a million different ways you could cut this overlay into how specific you want to get, how general you want to get. And after many, 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 many meetings, they will probably settle on their actual overlay stipulations and share that with the neighborhood and go from there. But I would think the steering committee would make sure that they have a majority of that favorable neighborhood residents in favor of that before they bring it to the council again.
Okay, so each neighborhood could have a different percentage as their approval if they chose to.
I think it would go by neighborhood.
Maybe
It would
not
really depend
recommended,
on how
but
your
right.
association
Okay.
wanted to approach it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions from the audience? Council? Okay, will the clerk conduct a roll call vote on, which one are we on? Resolution 2019-09.
Heidi,
Aye.
Clinker,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Okay, Resolution 2019-10.
A resolution to approve the City of Lafayette Community Development Block Grant and the Lafayette Housing Consortium Home Program Annual Action Plan for 2019.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
Madam President, I move that we hear and approve Resolution 2019 dash whatever that thing, what my mach, that's 10.
Second.
Okay. And Michelle Reynolds is going to speak.
Michelle Reynolds, Lafayette Housing Authority. So I'm requesting the approval for the City of Lafayette Community Development Block Grant, which is also known as CDBG, and Lafayette Housing Consortium Home Program, HOME, for the annual action plan for 2019. The amount of CDBG would be $685,804, and the amount of home funding is $1,129,920.
Okay, questions from council members?
Did you get an increase in this from last year or previous years?
We got a big increase for home last year, and it went down slightly this year, and then CDBG went up just a little bit.
Any other questions from the audience concerning this resolution? Hearing none, thank you. Will the clerk conduct a roll call vote on Resolution 2019-10?
Heidi?
Aye.
Blinker?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
Okay, Resolution 2019-11.
A resolution declaring the designation of a certain real estate as an economic revitalization area and approving the application for property tax abatement, LB Associates LLC Real Estate.
Mrs. Williamson?
I move that we hear and approve resolution number 2019-11.
Second.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, Dennis Carson, Economic Development Director. Before you have a resolution to establish an economic revitalization area for the purposes of tax abatement. The petitioner is LB Associates, and they're requesting a 10-year tax abatement. They will be investing $3 million in a 100,000 square foot warehouse. The Redevelopment Commission has reviewed this and is recommending unanimously for approval of this. And I just want to add that as an economic development official, we're very excited about this particular project because we need more warehouse inventory to attract more businesses and help existing businesses expand as well, too. Our occupancy rate on warehouses has been very high for a very long time, so this is a very welcome relief for our businesses and then getting new prospects in town as well, too. I'd like to next introduce Jerry Brand, who is with LB & Associates, and he can tell you a little bit more about the project. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Madam President, Council, my name is Jerry Brand. I'm the owner of Oak Investments. Oak Investments owns 100% of LB Associates. LB Associates has a 50-acre site that we already have developed 3 buildings that comprise of 184,000 square feet of commercial warehouse space that's 100% occupied. Oak Investments warehouse holdings are also 100% occupied outside of the LB Associates ground. We currently plan on developing the remaining 27 acres, 20 of which will be for warehousing area, and the first building that we're going to put up, we've had a slight change. It's going to be 87,500 instead of 100,000. We still don't have the total plans figured out yet because the turnarounds on the actual egress on Park East Boulevard. We're very bullish on the warehouse market, and that mainly is because of the great work the city has done to bring all the economic success into Lafayette.
Okay. Do you have any questions of Mr. Brandt?
Where is that on Park East Boulevard? By what building?
Park East Boulevard is Haggerty Lane, 200 it comes off. So if you keep going past it, you'd get into the FedEx building, and Old Dominion is currently building a precast structure right now. Basically, it's at where the old State Farm building or old Tractor Supply is right behind it is where we're talking. Park East Boulevard has not been connected to 38 yet. We did the improvements on that from a private standpoint to go ahead and get ready for this development. And then we were waiting for drainage in the past is why we have not developed this part of the ground.
My question was, have you any idea who your customer base is going to be? It's going to be what, SIA and all the other associated manufacturers?
Our business approach has been to do quite a bit of research in terms of what the market really needs. We do not go ahead and pre-lease our buildings when we sell them. We believe the best is to go ahead and figure out the needs of the community. So I don't have a particular tenant in mind, although I believe once we start breaking ground, we'll have people coming to us in a large fashion. We're primarily looking for users that would associate with all the larger name companies. I'm not going to mention any of them because I'll miss one and then somebody's going to give me some grief about it. But we have a great economic flywheel effect in terms of this community. So the basic need is a boutique type use where the 20,000 to 80,000 square foot client has a little bit of hard time finding actual space. So this building can be broken up into pieces if we need to. And the number one thing we're trying to do is develop the existing 3 buildings. If you're in 20,000 square feet, growing to 100,000, we're able to go through and handle that within one landlord where we can go ahead and handle for their economic success. It's typically what's happening is you're starting with a seedling that grows into a future business that grows into a large need, and they need the warehouse space.
Okay. Any questions from the audience about this ordinance?
Thank you.
Okay. Will the clerk conduct a roll call vote for Resolution 2019-11?
Heidi?
Aye.
Blinker?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
And we also need to set a public hearing for this resolution on June 3rd at 6:32. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay, and Mr. Reynolds?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, reports of standing committees. Okay, reports of special committees. Miscellaneous and new business. I don't think there's any. Report for the mayor? No. Reports of councilmen?
No, City Hall's closed tomorrow, right? No, it's open? Okay.
Okay, public comment. Now's the time if anybody would like to come up and
They can have it
make
in
a
here.
comment. You need to come to the podium and give your name and address. And state your concern.
Hi, everyone. Karina Atherton Childress, 1800 North 15th Street. It's been a while since I've stood up here. I just want to invite everyone on behalf of the Tippecanoe County Masonic Association, which is 9 lodges and also the Order of the Eastern Star, to our fish fry that is coming up on Saturday, day before Mother's Day. Great opportunity to bring out Mom, the aunts, the
Fill Mom with
sisters.
some fried fish.
It's $10 all you can eat, and it is a wonderful event. It's over 1,000 people every year, and it'll be at the fairgrounds in the Home Ec building, 4:30 to 7 o'clock in the evening. Plenty of time to go out drinking after. And hey, I had to say it. But it's all you can eat, fabulous fish. We have got grill masters like you would not believe, so it'll be great. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karina.
Anybody else for public comment? Anybody else? Mr. Heidi?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody